And welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Scint.
And we are continuing fighting this boss in Final Fantasy V and discussing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. She moved too fast.
Womp womp.
Oh, that still worked. I don't think this ever works, because I think she's considered floating. Anyway. Today we're moving on to everyone's favorite subjects when discussing stories about kids of this particular age group. Teenage angst.
More specifically, our notes mention a coming-of-age story, but when you have a series that tries to grow up with its audience, as this one did, you're eventually going to get to the point where you see lots and lots of teen angst, and this is the book where that really starts and hits the hardest. So yeah, as we've mentioned multiple times, Book 5, our main characters are 15. That is right about being a sophomore for those of us in the US, and that is an age where feelings happen. It's not quite as volatile as the middle school years, like 12 through 13 and so on and so forth, but there's a lot of growing pains, and you start seeing a little bit more, theoretically, maturity and focus on more grown-up things. Now, for example, this is probably the book where we get the heaviest focus on romance. Now, we touched somewhat on it in last book because of the Yule Ball, but that was mostly just an obligation to go take somebody to a dance. Nothing else beyond that. This one, however, we get to see people grappling with crushes and all that behavior that goes with it, and hard feelings when things don't go well, and people misreading situations and reacting poorly to the misreading of situations and being confused that the situations were misread when they thought it was perfectly clear, and all that good fun stuff. Specifically, obviously, I'm talking about Harry and Cho.
Which is one of the two primary interactions on that front that goes on in this story. The other, of course, being the continued romantic tension between Ron and Hermione. Oh, Lena's still unconscious. I should fix that. There we go.
Yep. We kind of got to see those really start in the fourth book as well, with Hermione getting really upset with Ron for treating her like a backup plan to be taken for granted when, she would have kind of liked to have been asked as a first choice. And she was asked as a first choice by someone else, which then makes Ron, in turn, very jealous. Though I don't think he'd actually see it in those terms, because kids. Then you have Harry kind of started to have a crush on Cho, maybe a little bit in passing in Azkaban. Well, Prisoner of Azkaban, not actually Azkaban, that'd be awkward. And actually starts to act on it in Goblet of Fire, asking her to the dance, but happens too late because she was already going out with Cedric, which he didn't know. So, in this book, since Cedric is no longer there, he has a chance to ask her out, which, will probably be read as incredibly awkward, considering why Cedric is no longer there. But,
yeah.
Teenagers. And that actually does play pretty heavily into why things go fairly pear-shaped fairly quickly.
Yep.
Show
With a
seems
heavy...
to really...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, with a heavy emphasis on Harry seems to be emotionally not fully mature at this point and has difficulty with coping with someone else coping with being in mourning.
Yeah. What I was also going to say was Cho is leaning on Harry as a crutch to get over Cedric, partly because Harry was the last one to see Cedric alive, and I think there are some ways that he reminds her a lot of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, being the rebound is already really, really awkward. But Harry also, as you mentioned, is not fully emotionally mature and ready for something like this, does not understand most of what is happening with what's going on, and manages to, in pretty short order, when they do go on a date for Valentine's Day, greatly upset Cho because he had to meet up with Hermione for a project that Hermione didn't say anything about, which would have really been helpful if she had given him some coaching with that, because she does have experience with Harry to know that he's kind of dumb when it comes to feelings. And basically Harry gives Cho the impression that he's two-timing her with another girl, and he has no idea why she gets mad and walks off.
Right.
Because, you know. And then, of course, the whole situation that we mentioned before with her friend selling out the entire group to Umbridge obviously does not make things any better between them. So, yeah, there's a lot of focus on feelings are hard, relationships are hard, that we don't see in the earlier books. But it's here to stay now. So the angst. Angst. I don't know how true this was, but I remember when I was a kid hearing something about people having headaches from reading it because there was so much capitalization used, because Harry is yelled at a lot. So, again, I don't have that verified, but it was a persistent rumor when it came out.
I was not part of the community back then, so I honestly can't pitch my 2 cents in on that. Is it? Hello.
But yeah, so Harry is angry and lashing out at people around him a lot more in this book, and it's easy at first stroke to say, well, yeah, he's just at that difficult age, and write the whole thing off. But you have to bear in mind what Harry has been going through. Harry witnessed someone more capable than he was murdered right before his eyes, barely escaped his own life, and was basically immediately told by the most powerful politically wizard in Britain when he got back that he didn't believe him, didn't want to believe him, and wasn't going to have any part of it. Harry has then been isolated from the entire wizarding world, more or less, for the summer, while things start to get worse politically, with him starting to be turned into a little joke that really slips by his notice, but Hermione picked up on because she was reading the entire paper, not just the front page. And, well, yeah. So, Harry went through a traumatic experience, had no one to talk to about it for the entire summer, because the Dursleys sure as heck weren't going to listen to him, even though, according to Dudley, Harry was having nightmares that had him screaming about things. And then he gets attacked by a Dementor. And then he's nearly expelled, and then he's, avoided by Dumbledore, who he's always looked to as a mentoring father figure. And then people continue to keep things from him when he gets to the Order of the Phoenix's headquarters. And they wonder why he's lashing out and being volatile when he is effectively being held responsible for many, many things and told absolutely nothing that he can do anything about. That's not a fun position to be in for anyone. And being that age with that many unresolved emotions to deal with, anyone would break.
Yep. His behavior isn't unexpected. The bigger issue is that he has next to no one to talk to about this.
Yep. Then he does eventually get back to Ron and Hermione, but because he's so frustrated, he doesn't really approach them so much as lash out at them. Which, is great when you want to keep your friends. Because understanding only goes so far in a lot of cases. People will only put up with so much before friendships get really strained.
Yep.
Thankfully, they do seem to work it out, more or less. But, yeah. So we get to see a lot more of Harry struggling with his emotions throughout this fantasy and others, which he's getting older, he's getting into more complex situations, and he's not got an adequate support system to really cope with it in a healthy fashion. So yeah, that's going to read a lot like teen angst. There's the normal teen angst, but there's also Wizard Hitler is going to kill us all, which I would not call angst so much as a realistic reaction.
I've got to find some better spells for some of these characters.
Well, if you look for honey, you should be able to find a spelling bee.
Boo.
No, bee. But yeah, I think Harry's the primary source that we get to see our angst through, though we do get a fair bit from Ron and Hermione, a fair background will they or won't they nonsense happening. Which, we get to see more later, I think. We get to see a little bit because Ron decides to be the protective big brother when he finds out that Ginny is dating people. And, wonder how much of that is my younger sister started going on dates before I did.
I wouldn't be surprised. Stop killing my healer.
But how will we kill you if we don't take out the healer?
You could not kill me. That would be awesome.
But that's our job. But yeah, so adding to the highly emotional situation that they're all in is, again, the situation at school. Everybody is on edge. No one's really sure how to feel about Harry. Some of the people he's always counted as friends start to shy away from him because of how Fudge has taken a stance against him. Oh, and he has a teacher who's specifically there to crack down on anything remotely perceived as potential dissent, which, also adds to a pretty stressful element to everything else going on.
Especially when her punishment for... Especially when her punishment for that dissent is literal torture.
Let's be honest here. Some schools, in ye olde days, did do paddling as a punishment, but that wasn't, disfigurement? Because I don't really know a better way to say, make sure that you deliver a punishment that, if it happens more than once, leaves lasting scars. Which then Harry actively refuses to report, even though it probably could have gotten Umbridge in trouble. But Harry was afraid of making things worse. Which, what does that tell you about the situation when I'm literally being tortured and disfigured on a regular basis, but I'm not able to tell anyone about this because of what might happen as a result? So yeah, with all that in mind, it's really no wonder that this is the book where we get the most amount of angst possible. And then we have Luna, who is just like the anti-angst, and I love her. Luna has actually gone through some pretty heavy stuff. Like, she watched her mom die in an experiment gone wrong when she was fairly young. But she's always seemed fairly cheerful, even though she, from what it sounds like, gets hazed pretty frequently. At the end of the book, she's hunting for her things because the other Ravenclaws like to hide her stuff because they think it's funny to mess with loony Lovegood. And yeah, almost everybody makes fun of Luna because she's a little bit of an oddball, but she, that we see, never seems to have a volatile reaction at all. She just kind of floats on through things and doesn't let it get to her. You kind of wonder how she manages to cope with everything like that, but she's in a better emotional place than a lot of people, despite everything being leveled at her. So, you go, girl.
Yep. And this is why Luna is one of both of our favorite characters.
Luna's great. Yeah, so, I'm not really sure what else to add here.
I'm not sure there is much more to say on this. We've pretty much covered the gamut of how things are currently with regards to these poor kids growing up in a very not fun time to be growing up.
Yup.
And in the game, we have gathered the first 3 of the 12 legendary weapons and started the process of let's dealing with X-Death. So we've got a few more little, I guess you would technically call them side quests, to get as many of the rest of the weapons as we can. And we've got 2 more books to go, as we're not done with Order of the Phoenix, but we're getting close. So, shouldn't be too much trouble in finishing the game and the books up and around the same time, as expected.
We'll just have to see how it goes.
Yep.
Until next time.
See y'all then. Have a good one.